All right, we're here today. I've got my sweet little Susie with me. I'm so glad. And my born again evangelical, uh,
Charismatic, charismatic.
charismatic member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I knew I was forgetting something. John, welcome.
Starts
This is
with,
so
yeah,
great.
well, it's great to be
Yeah.
with you, and it starts with charismatic, of course.
Okay, so say the full thing again. I love it.
Okay. I'm a charismatic evangelical born again member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
There it
So,
is. It's so cool. I
and
love that.
it's been really fun. I had I don't know if I mentioned it. I think I told you personally, but my wife's daughter put up a child for adoption years ago, and that child ended up going to Brad Pello's sister, Brad Pello from The Chosen. And through the most amazing, miraculous situation, this teenager decided to keep the baby, which was good. I mean, keep it, deliver it, and put it up. And it ended up through a series of the strangest, most coincidental spiritual experiences going to this particular couple that had already had a couple of kids, and they had just adopted a South American son, and they had wanted one more, and so they, or whatever, so it ended up going to them, and after the adoption and everything else, they hadn't even figured out that the my Janet, was actually second cousins to the grandma or to the mother of the new adopted child. So,
Oh,
so the birth mother's the third cousin from her son that she adopted to this other family. Well, that was Brad Pello of The Chosen, the executive producer, and so that was kind of interesting. But I was laughing. I had them at our house about a month ago, and we were talking about some things, and I told him about my being a member of the charismatic evangelical born again, and he thought that was so interesting, and we talked about it, that he went home and he gave a high council talk a couple days later, and he introduced himself as that he had joined a new religion, and this was in Arizona. And so I thought, I should be probably getting a phone call pretty soon from starting this. But I've had a great response with this so far, so it's been a lot of fun.
well, I loved what you said before when we first chatted about it, and you'd come up with this, and it was very what do they say, organic, how
Yeah.
you thought of it or that it came to you. And I loved how you said that it, we shouldn't be ashamed of those things. Those are all scriptural. They're all based in faith
They
in
apply to
Christ.
us.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm going to open a door here for just so keep talking.
Yeah, it applies to us, in my opinion. And I thought, why do we let everyone take away our colors, our rainbow, our adjectives? I'm gonna start taking them back. I want to start taking back the Christian terms, because,
Yeah,
and the thing that I found, that it really does soften the interaction and the discussion with people. I mean, it really does kind of disarm them, and their first response often is, "Wow, what's that?" So it's been a lot of fun, but it's so great to see you two and to be with you both today. And I had a very interesting, we're going through, I'm in southern Utah, so the weather's pretty darn good. And northern Utah is good one day and then horrible the next day. So you guys are all bundled up, I guess, in your overcoat. And I should probably go out and sit by the pool. But it's kind of crazy how that's happened. But ironically, since the wonderful response, I mean, we had such a fabulous response from our last discussion. And afterwards, I thought, I kind of was winging it, which I do anyway. And so there were probably a few of the dates and the details that were a little bit muddled, but the gist of the story was there. And it's been wonderful to see how well it was received by the followers. And last week, at the last minute, we heard from a neighbor that Carl Anderson was going to make a speaking appearance in Southern Utah. Somebody flew him down to speak, and poor Carl. Wow. I mean, he's getting older, harder to get around. He and his sweet wife Joyce, and so Jen and I got invited. It was actually just for one group of temple workers or something. Was somebody, a friend of Carl's, had flown him down and to have him speak. So we went there, and it was really fun because he's up there speaking, and he's looking over the audience, and he sees me and kind of smiles and waves about, thanks for what I had contributed to the process. And afterwards we had a chance to hug and talk and everything. And I said, Carl, are you taking your cardio miracle? He says, well, after my fall, I stopped taking. I said, that's when you needed to take it. And so I replenished his supply, told Joyce, please, please, please give Carl this. It'll help him with his quality of life and help him with the various things that he's been dealing with. But what a joy. What a great guy. And I mean, he's been working on this since, the 80s and 70s. And so to see this come to pass was really miraculous and fantastic. But in the process, I recognized that I had talked about President Don Brewer, who was the one who recruited me essentially to help. But I didn't mention enough about Don Brewer. Don Brewer had some amazing dreams, and I'll share them with you. But I got a booklet from one of his helpers, a guy named Cully Davis, who's the one who actually recruited me to meet Don, who was in that mission. And Cully Davis has been a longtime friend, acquaintance of mine. We've made and lost money in deals and everything, but his heart was in Kirtland, and I'm telling you, he laid it all on the line for Kirtland. And all of us, in our flawed ways, often make an impact when we don't really know the impact. But I had a chance to spend some time with Brother Davis, and he's the one who always keeps me updated on what's going on there. And he got me this brochure that they put together that talks about some of the dreams that President Brewer had, which was interesting. So we can talk about that a little bit today as well. But Sue, it's great to see you and great to have you be a part of this. That's you're the draw. So we'll hopefully people will listen to Scott and I talk.
I'm the draw.
News a little bit. So Scott, go for it.
Well, there's probably some that didn't hear our video a few weeks ago when the church purchased the Kirtland Temple, as well as other documents and other places in Nauvoo. And so it was a big deal, and it still is a big deal. Kirtland, to me, is where the fulfillment of what we thought of and what the early saints thought of Zion. We had manifestations of all kinds, the Savior himself appearing, and then we had a week after the dedication is when we had the key holders, I guess, bring back priesthood keys. These were all amazing events.
Yeah,
the visitations, and I think we mentioned about Truman Madsen's book about the prophet Joseph. There's a whole chapter on just the Kirtland manifestations and the journals, the journal entries of people what they witnessed and what they saw. And so to have this come back full circle to where people, members of the church, can go there to that temple now. And from what I understand, it's dedicated. It's obviously not a functioning temple, but it's a dedicated site. And they're actually talking about those manifestations, where when you went before, when it was the Church of Christ or Community of Christ.
Community of Christ,
yeah. And prior to that, the reorganized church, you'd never get that. You just wouldn't get that information. So
it was like going through, it was like a museum tour instead of a religious site tour.
Yeah. Right. and that's what Sue and I had experienced when we went there. It was awesome. You could feel, but you'd have to read the stories before, between the lines, and then kind of picture where it all took place and the pulpits, the different pulpits on either side and all that. But what's amazing is like, and what I loved what you said is that there's individuals that came later that the Lord put in there for a specific reason. And quite often these people are overlooked because they don't have maybe a particular calling, or they don't have this, or they don't have that. But what
Right.
they do have is they have something within them, and the Lord is using them for a purpose. And none of this would have happened if it weren't for individuals like that.
Right.
It just doesn't poof happen out of nowhere. So I loved what you taught last time we talked, and we could maybe get into a little more detail on that. I'd love
That'd be great. No, I'd love to. And I agree with you 100%. I think one of the key things is the fact that the Lord said, I'll make strong things from weak things and from people. And Joseph Smith acknowledged himself as being part of that situation. But here's just a quick couple of quotes. The prophets testify of Kirtland. Howard Hunter said, the feelings I've felt here in Kirtland, I've felt in only one other place in the world, the Holy Land. Ezra Taft Benson said, I feel like I've been walking on sacred ground in Kirtland, and my soul is subdued and my feelings tender. There's no other church history location that's more important than Kirtland. Gordon B. Hinckley, in no other area of the church was so much revelation received. In no other place was thy beloved Son so revealed to mortal men. In no other place was there such remarkable manifestations given to so many. I think this is a really important thing for a lot of the people who are straying from the covenant path or membership in the church or anything else. Is they have a tendency to say, well, Joseph Smith had a vision or whatever, but no big deal. But Kirtland has so many witnesses, dozens, hundreds of witnesses of spiritual events. Russell Nelson said, I honor Kirtland as a holy land. The Lord appeared often out of love to teach a better way of life. Russell Ballard, Kirtland is hallowed sacred ground. There's no other place where there have been so many spiritual manifestations save the Holy Land. It has been said we may discover that Kirtland's our most significant church history site. You have to think that heaven was walking here with the people. Jeff Holland, I continue to have strong feelings about the prophet Joseph's experience in Kirtland. Everyone would agree that the young Joseph was a prophet and translator from Palmyra, but it seems he took on a full mantle of seer and revelator in Kirtland. So that's what the prophets have said. And so that was fantastic. And the aspect, the fact that it was cursed as Hiram as they left. And then it said that in 1841, Hiram sent a letter to the Kirtland saints with this prophecy. All the saints that dwell in that land are commanded to come away, for this is, thus saith the Lord. Therefore, pay out no monies nor properties for houses or lands in that country, Ohio. For if you do, you will lose them. For in time shall come that you shall not possess them in peace, but shall be scourged with a sore scourge. Yet your children may possess them. But not until many years shall pass away.
Wow. Prophecy fulfilled. Boom.
Prophecy fulfilled. It said there were no full-time missionaries in Kirtland after 1842. The temple was abandoned. A garbage dump was located next to the temple. 130 years later, Kirtland's population remained 2,000 people. And then in 1976, President Kimball spoke at the Cleveland Coliseum to 17,000 people, 12,000 non-members, to commemorate the word of wisdom, which had been received in Kirtland. And then the next day, Cleveland Stake President Carl Anderson took him to visit the Kirtland Temple and the Whitney Store. Before returning home, President Kimball said he felt strongly that when he returned to Salt Lake, he must do something about Kirtland. And 2 months later, Don Brewer was called as mission president. He was told he was going to South America, and the call came, and it was to Columbus, Ohio, instead. And
a little different. just a little
Yeah.
different.
And so July 13th of 76, President Brewer met with Carl Anderson, it was when they first met, who said he felt strongly that many signs were pointing towards the lifting of the curse or scourge placed upon the area. And so it said, so President Brewer wrote in his journal, I feel this is when the key was turned in the lock that has held Kirtland captive for so many years, opening the way for restoring the Kirtland village and building a visitor center there. So President Kimball came in 76, and then the mission president came out, or they called Don Brewer and his wife to be the mission president. And then when Don Brewer went to Elder Haight to say, how come I'm not going to Colombia, South America with my Spanish? They said, you need to go to Ohio. And it says, so Elder Haight, David Haight, and I didn't remember this, David Haight pulled out a pen and drew a map. And he said, there are a number of cities north of I-90 where there's several members, but there are no members in Kirtland. The church owns no property in the 17 square mile area of Kirtland. No missionaries have been there in over 100 years. The brethren want that changed. Now, President Brewer, you know why you've been called to the Ohio.
Oh, wow.
So that's pretty exciting. And then, so on Thanksgiving, the day after Thanksgiving, President Brewer was showing the Whitney store to his mother, who was out visiting, who wanted to feel the spirit that was there. Now, no one lived there. No missionaries had been there for 135 years. As they were leaving, President Brewer felt impressed to linger. Alone in an upstairs room, he prayed for guidance, and the whole scene came before me. I knew what I was supposed to do and how we were going to put missionaries in Kirtland. I saw the elders moving in, living upstairs in the Whitney store. I knew that missionaries would walk the streets of Kirtland again. Now, Kirtland had an ordinance at the time prohibiting solicitation, which had kept missionaries away for years. So there was a city ordinance against proselyting in Kirtland. Previous mission presidents had tried sending missionaries, but law enforcement had stopped them. So President Brewer prayed of how to begin, that you couldn't do proselyting, you couldn't initiate conversations, you're to act as official, historic, fact-finding missionaries. So it's kind of what's going on, in other parts of the world, kind of how they do things in Israel and China and India and other countries where they can't proselyte, or they didn't used to. So they said, act like fact-finding missionaries, research in the library, dress as missionaries, walk the streets in the historic areas of town 3 or 4 days a week for 2 or 3 hours. Take pictures of homes you may have been built in the 1800s, be writing down the addresses and taking notes. The result was curious neighbors began stopping them to find out what they were doing. They said they were sent by the church to learn about the history of Kirtland. Because of their friendly, non-threatening approach, they soon were invited into the homes of longtime residents. They became friends with many residents, and the acceptance from the Mormons from Utah had begun. So it was interesting. So in August of 1978, President Brewer studied the ordinance and said, he visited with the mayor, who said it only applied to door-to-door salesmen and to not religious groups. And that's when they were able to start having missionaries in Kirtland.
Oh, man.
So you had a small grocery store owner from Salt Lake City who gets a mission call right after President Kimball, and is sent there. And then a few weeks, and this is pretty cool stuff. A few weeks before they left on their mission, President Brewer wrote, I had a vision that opened upon me as I slept. I saw myself standing in front of the Kirtland temple, speaking with a stranger. I looked at the temple and marveled at its simplicity and beauty. As I stood gazing, I beheld a vacant area of green grass, and I said, there upon that vacant lot, our church will build a visitor center where the public may come and hear the story of the temple and its purpose. The stranger emphatically stated, you can't build a visitor center on that lot. It belongs to the reorganized church. I immediately turned around, looking south along the street running in front of the temple. I saw a 2-story building on the other side of the road. Pointing to the building, I said, all right, then we'll build it where that building now stands, and we'll tell the world the story of this magnificent temple. Because the dream was so powerful and intensely engraved in my memory, I understood it was to be part of my mission. Some months later, I was given to understand that 2 visitor centers would be built, one by the reorganized church and one by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
A couple of things. Well, did you have something to say first?
No.
Interject anytime, but a couple of things as you've read these accounts that really jumped out. First off, the Newell K. Whitney store, the room up there is where the School of the Prophets, which is interesting because who attended that meeting, and it's almost like President Brewer was an extension of that school, because he had basically a vision. He saw what the future was going to be.
Yeah.
And it started from that room. These are sacred sites. And it's where we get the lectures on faith, is from the discussions that happened in that room. It's just so amazing. The other thing I think is so interesting is the first quotes that you did. Many of them compared Kirtland to the Holy Land. And one thing I did, and I would recommend others do it, is the prophets told us to study section 109, the dedicatory prayer of the Kirtland Temple. If you study that in addition to the dedication of Solomon's temple, the prayer that Solomon gave, they're so similar. And in fact, Joseph used whole phrases that were from that dedication. And as I said in a previous video, as far as record is concerned, those 2 temples were the only ones where it was the Lord himself said, I accept this house as my house. Right. And so there is a tie between Kirtland and the Holy Land. There's a huge tie. And that first temple built in the last dispensation is tied to the temple on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. So these things this is what blends the house of Israel. It's a literal house. It's a temple that blends the houses of Israel together. I just love that. So
and Elijah happened to show up,
and Elijah came,
and all of the others bringing all the keys back to that place.
That's right. That place.
So it's pretty interesting. So here's the chronology date-wise, just for interest quickly.
Yeah.
January 21st, property in Kirtland became available. President Brewer sent a letter requesting the church buy the property and build a visitor center. The request was denied. February of 1980, the Kirtland Visitor Center was approved. To avoid creating too much interest and encouraging a bidding war, the land was purchased confidentially. 3 years later, in 1989, the church purchased 14 acres of the original Morley farm. As part of the purchase, Francis Maxwell was allowed to live there. June 26, and this is an interesting story, June 26 of 1991, Elder Lawrence C. Dunn visited the Whitney store, which sat at the corner just feet from an intersection. As he stepped out of his car, he was nearly hit by a passing vehicle. The church determined that no restoration could begin until the 2 roads were moved. The snowball effect was the moved roads had to go over a river with no road traffic. Telephone poles or power lines were all out of place. It would be costly, time-consuming to bury the lines, but it had to be done. October of 1992, the church granted permission to buy land to reroute the dangerous roads. January of 1997, the Kirtland Committee, Division of Mormon Historic Sites, was formed to raise funds privately for the restoration. It was 97, is when I got recruited in. So from 95 to 201, sacred church funds couldn't be used. So President Brewer and former missionaries, this Elder Davis and several of his companions and friends, spearheaded the fundraising. They raised $13 million. Originally it was 10, but then we ended up needing 13, I guess, in private donations to make the infrastructure changes in Kirtland, build the new visitor center, and produce a video to be shown there. August of 201, ribbon cutting and dedication for the 2 new roads. Now, the road thing was pretty crazy because you can imagine, how would you like to go negotiate with UDOT, the Utah Department of Transportation,
no thanks,
to say we're looking at restoring Taggart's restaurant up the canyon there. So, but would like to move the highway across the river so we could have a bigger parking lot. I mean, fat chance of those types of things happening. It ended up being like at the bottom of the list, and somehow it ended up moving its way up. And then, of course, I told the story. So in 202, the first phase, the dedication was 203. May 18th, it's coming up. May 18th is when it was dedicated, and we were there. And prior to that, in the dedication, you know, I mentioned the Steve Young story of how Steve Young was on the cover of Sports Illustrated with Kirtland City of Faith, and that ended up helping the city council. And the city council went from being split and at a stymie to go ahead and dedicate the temple. I mean, to go ahead and allow the restoration to occur. And then the remainder of this is talking about how important there's a log schoolhouse area. If you've ever walked up the path from the Morley farm, the area where the high priests and the visions, and they had a major encounter with the adversary, those types of things. This same group is still trying to figure out how they can get that log cabin restored. So, but everything else has been done that was on Don Brewer and Carl Anderson's visionary list. As just, you know, one was a stake president, one was being called as a mission president, but just like Brother Wood, who was the one who bought the New OK Whitney story, it was just a guy, you know, a high priest, you know, following the Spirit and doing what he's supposed to do. So, you know, again, we all have, and it was a battle with the bureaucracy to get this thing restored back in the day. It really took President Kimball, then President Benson, and then ultimately President Hinckley to pull it off because there were some thoughts that the church was investing too much in historic sites and those types of things. And interesting, as I've been reviewing and thinking about this, I mean, you know, you can start discounting a lot of what they tell us our dollar's worth about 5 cents compared to what it was 30 years ago. So I guess whatever you pay for something doesn't matter at this point. But I think that it's been a wonderful outpouring among the saints of being excited about having the Kirtland Temple back. It's been great.
And it seemed like just kind of a crowning jewel on the whole purchase and everything was the eclipse. The solar eclipse was total right over Kirtland. And so many people got to go not only to see, because the temple by then had been rededicated and ready, open for visitors. And they got to see the total eclipse as well as go in the Kirtland Temple. So pretty cool.
So cool.
I can't wait to go back. We've been talking about that, trying to.
We should do that. Let's go with you. Let's go. Let's go together. That would be fun.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll tell you,
that's the deal.
We did the tour a few years ago with Carl Anderson. I think I mentioned, and it was a blast. It was really fun, and I mean, it was great. You know, it was. I'm not sure which tour group, but you know, we stopped at like the equivalent of the Golden Corral for dinner, and we wandered from place to place, and you know, we'd go and have these spiritual experiences, and then go eat a cheap buffet. You know, it's interesting. We probably all should have fasted for 4 days or whatever. We're an interesting collection, us Latter-day Saints. You know, maybe the celebration of the word of wisdom and the things that make us unique. But you know, it's interesting, Scott, as we look at the and Sue, as we look at the challenges that we're seeing around us. We were talking to somebody the other day, a friend who was a temple worker, and I mean, they're maxed out. The sessions are amazing. So we have this falling away, and then we have this strengthening. We have just such an interesting time of sifting in so many ways, and then of course we still have, you know, some of these other challenges we're dealing with in our world. And well, I'll tell you, there's way too many funerals. Way too many funerals. Every time I turn around, there's a lot of people are suffering. A lot of single people. I would highly recommend, the other day as I was scanning our ward and saw the widows and the widowers and all the different things. I mean, I thought, and I'm sure that you've thought of this from time to time. You think, what a difficult situation to lose a companion, lose a child, but lose a companion for so many for years. I mean, for years. I mean, we had a widow in Woodland, the Woodland Ward, this great pioneer lady, Elizabeth Leffler. Her husband, I think, died in he was either 50 or late 40s, and she had 9 children or 10 children. And she just, I mean, I remember watching her until her 90, whatever, 6th, 7th birthday. She's out there pruning her roses. She's always there, never missed a meeting, faithful as can be. And I mean, she was a widow for 40 years.
Yeah.
So,
crazy.
Our hearts need to go out to them and help them. And, the crazy thing is, it's been such a joy for us to deal with. We just finished helping to sponsor the Black Robes Regiment, which is, it's an evangelical group. So here's the Black Robes Regiment, sponsored by charismatic evangelical born-again member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The people at that event would have the 200 ministers at that event would probably have had a coronary. I wasn't able to go, but I was represented there by Pastor Graham, and they're doing a fantastic work in trying to help rally the pastors and rally the ministry to speak about voting, speak about looking for good candidates, speaking for finding people who embrace the Christian Judeo concept of our Constitution and of our founding of our country. So we're actively involved. That's where Cardio Miracle benefits go to the evangelical people who are trying to help save our country. And then this month, we're also doing the Black American roll call with Jason Whitlock in Nashville, and then Kevin Sorbo, Hercules, the former star of a lot of movies, and has been blackballed by Hollywood because he's Christian and anti-abortion, everything else. We're also sponsoring his event. So we've got this month has been evangelical, the charismatic evangelical born again Latter-day Saints sponsorship of trying to bridge the gap for us to fight for our liberty and our choice to do what we need to do in treating our own prevention and our own circumstance in trying to deal with our immune system and trying to help us. And last night I was up a little late and I was reading horrific things. I mean, we have a government now that's going through the paces of having congressional hearings, and they're not even getting to the heart of the issue, seriously, literally. And it's like, it's all theater. It's all a charade. It's like, and we're seeing everyone posturing. All of the people who I think were responsible for this are, they're just changing their story. And they're, it's like the old days. Somebody said once, how can you tell when, no offense to any Democrats out there, how can you tell when Bill Clinton was lying? And they said, just his lips are moving. Yeah. So, but unfortunately we're seeing that.
In fact, I said that. I told somebody that today. I
went, really?
I did. I said, but it wasn't about Bill Clinton. It was about somebody else. And I said, well, how you can tell that they're lying because they're talking.
Well, I think that we've seen, so I don't know. I was telling you earlier that King Benjamin's my favorite. Is my favorite sermon in the Book of Mormon. And I actually, when I was a young early morning seminary teacher, I actually did a big, almost a research paper on it. I remember even what I wrote it in this funky notebook, and I remember just really pouring through that back in those days. I'm not as good a scripture pourer as you are, Scott, but that really had a profound impact on me, and the fact of, that we're all just wayfarers. We're all just trying our best to find our way. And the challenge we have to be aware of is pride and selfishness and everything else. And so I don't know. I've always lived on the, if I go, I'm kind of a gut feel kind of guy that kind of does stuff just because I feel like it's right, even though I don't, I wish I could claim more spiritual guidance, but it's wonderful to be a part of answering other people's prayers and to be someone who can reach out and help in some way. And then you find out that that was their prayer out of left field. So it's really interesting. So part of the important thing I think is in today's world is go and do, go and serve, make it happen. Press for. That's one of my favorite scripture. Press forward with a perfect brightness of hope. And I just can't thank you and Sue enough for the fact that you provide, I think, through a real tough stretch for you and your family. You provided a perfect brightness of hope in the process. And so, on behalf of all of your thousands of people who admire and appreciate your efforts, you've been a great example to us. And we all have to prepare to go through hard things, and then know that the best way. I mean, and it's interesting because my son is wanting me to finish my book. I've started 2 of them. I've got to finish. And actually, almost the first 11 years of my life were all based upon loss, death. As a 3-year-old, my best friend, one day was there, the next day he was gone. He fell off a slippery slide. We used to run around the neighborhood together, and all of a sudden, one day he's there, the next day he was gone. And I was too young to go to a funeral. I didn't understand. And I was either 3 or almost 4 years old. At 7, my best friend was my grandpa. And they picked me up every day at kindergarten and took me out to lunch. And, one day my mom said, Grandpa's in the hospital. And we went over to LDS Hospital, and I stood on the outside before they would allow you to visit. And I remember on the 2nd floor seeing my feeble grandfather's hand waving. He was my best friend. He never came out. I remember going to his funeral and being really confused. And then 4 years later, woke up to my father weeping that my older brother had been killed the night before in a car accident by a drunk driver. So by the time I was 11, I had gone through 3 very traumatic losses. And then a year later, my other grandfather died, who I admired greatly, but I wasn't near as close to as my first grandfather. And then when I was on my mission, I had an incredible experience. I'll have to share it with you sometime. I had a companion who just absolutely did not want to be on a mission. He was causing havoc in the mission. And because it's a long story, but because I had just shown up in New Zealand, and because of my shy demeanor and my non-confident situation, the assistants to the president said, hey, we got a guy for him. Let's give him this elder who's been beating up his last companion. And I ended up being companions with this guy who grew up in the streets of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And he had submitted to evil spirits. He was possessed. And I figured that out finally after about 4 days being with him. And I had never had any experience with that before. And long story short, I was a part of having that be cast out. Life altering, testimony strengthening, unbelievable experience. And then he changed, and he became, we ended up baptizing like 17 people in the next 30 days. I mean, just broke every record it was miraculous. And then we discovered when the president came down to interview him and was so shocked at the miracle that happened with this elder. And, but he said the president interviewed him and said he looks kind of pale. Get him to the doctor, and took him to the doctor. and they discovered he had aplastic anemia. And so they had to send him back to Auckland from our mission. We were at the other end of the country, the coast, and then a few weeks later they sent him home, and then so he was like a brother to me. It's a long story. It's a great story, but I ended up getting home, going to see him in the hospital. I went off to Rick's College on a leadership scholarship thing when President Eyring was first there. Neil Maxwell said, "Why don't you go to Rick's College?" So I went to Rick's College for a year, but I came back at Thanksgiving, and he was so weak in the hospital and had literally spent the last year and a half, that 18-month, 2-year nightmare, and he just wept in my arms and thanked me for helping him get a testimony of the gospel. And he was like the most spiritual person I'd ever met. But I watched him in this horrific physical state. He was 140 pounds. He had been a star athlete, 6'5", 215. And he was just emaciated, wasting away on the treatments. And so I prayed that he would pass away, and he died the next day. And so I went to his funeral. So, and then my dad died at 30 when I was 32. So, but there's a lot of people who've had a lot rougher time in life than me. But because I'm not saying that I'm a pro at dealing with the loss. It's just I had so many losses up until I was 21 years old that it gave me the perspective of eternity. It gave me the perspective of life after death. And because I wanted to believe I would see them again, and that I had felt them. I can't feel them like spiritual people, like my wife can, but I've sensed them multiple times, and I've had a dream. I had a dream of a deceased person that we had a most incredible conversation. So when I look at faith and faith crises, go back to Kirtland. Go back to reading the spiritual experiences. If you think that you're confused about what's going on in the Latter-day Church or what's going on with this or that, well, maybe Kirtland had to work its way through 50 years of bureaucracy to get back where it needed to be, but it's back home now. And so those are all good things. And then, but I think the message partly is like with Don Brewer, had Don Brewer and Carl Anderson and many, many others not done what they had done, we would not have experienced what's now happened. So if the good question sometimes is, if not us, who?
Who?
Or we are they. We are they. Oh, who's going to do this? Well, we are they. So I guess we better do it. So that's just kind of an interesting time. But what a wonderful blessing that you've had through your community during this trial in your life, but what a blessing that it's been for me to have reconnected with you after our days at Jeremy Ranch in the mid '80s. It's been a long time. It's been great. So
it's been wonderful. Yeah, you're talking about that perspective that you get when you were so young, having experienced death and separation. But what happens is you do get that, what they say, that 40,000 foot view of things. And Sue and I have talked about the sanctifying process of going through these kind of things, because you really do have to rely on the Lord. You have to study, you have to learn, and your faith expands. It doesn't. You're still hurt, right? You still.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
That doesn't go away. At least it hasn't for me. But
nor me.
Yeah.
And it never goes away.
It just doesn't. It doesn't go away, and you know that. But yeah, I loved what you said there. It was good. I know you have something to say.
What, something to cry about?
Yeah.
No, I just believe that we're all put in each other's paths, and we really are so thankful, John, to have come lived by you so many years ago and then come across you again. And, I just think of what Scott and his preaching, and that's what he loves to do. And he was talking about it. He said, I might not be anybody important to anybody, but he said, I'm preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I can honestly say he is one that does not idle away his time by doing things that, and I'm not saying that living life and enjoying life is idling away, but his determination in reading the scriptures is just, it's really unbelievable and so satisfying to be able to be married to somebody who is, that finds that so important. And it's so wonderful to be with like-minded people like you and Jan who, have this great desire and great testimony of our history, our past, why it's important to have our freedoms, and how important it is for our future and what it means for our future. Satan's whole plan was for us to follow him and follow that one path. Well, Heavenly Father's plan is follow my path, but follow you, who you are individually, and we can all join together again. I know that the path is narrow, the path is straight, and the gate is not very wide to get into, have a celestial life. But I think that the opportunity for us to all learn from each other and feel the Spirit. You said, I'm not very spiritual, I just have this gut feeling. Well, that's what the Spirit is. The Spirit is that gut feeling. Some people have, like Janet, she
very, very, very intuitive that way. Yeah.
Very intuitive. And another friend of mine, she is a counselor, and she said that she is given certain things like smells or sight or hearing of things that she can help these people. And these people have not told her anything. And she says, oh, I just wonder what, she says, we hear about our gifts, and I'm thinking that is definitely a gift for you to be able to help these people. But anyway, we all come with our talents. My talent is, I don't know what my talent is. I have many, many talents, I guess, are not real visible. But I just think that as we go through our life and we go through afflictions and happiness, if we do what Heavenly Father wants us to, if we follow that path, then we are filled with the greatest light and the greatest joy. And I think that my fear for life, well, not for life, but I have had great fears in my life. And they truly have been taken away. I still have some sleepless nights, but it's not because I'm fearful of what lies ahead. It's just that
you're concerned. You're concerned. You can be concerned without being afraid. And you're concerned for other people. Often it's your concern for your children, grandchildren, neighbors, friends, all of those who don't have the same anchor or have the same spiritual rock of foundation that you've been able to secure because of your strong pressing forward in doing good.
Wow.
And that your strength is being frankly honest. That's a great, great quality of a person who can articulate it and being very honest. And really, I want you to come down and I want you to help Jan transition her hair like yours. Your hair looks great, Sue. I love it.
My gray hair?
I love it. I love it. Well, I really do. I want her to transition. I said, you don't need to. I said, I'd like to have you go silver on me here. So, like me,
I just want Heavenly Father to recognize me when I die, or Jesus Christ. I don't want him to go, gosh, you look a little bit different, you know, you look a little bit different than you were in real life. I'm like, so that's me. I just want to be, I'm just.
Yeah.
We probably ought to wrap up here, but I wanted to mention, because I know there's some listeners out there that haven't heard the story, but John, you were impressed, inspired. You felt an urge to reach out to me right before I was having surgery. We hadn't talked in years, right?
No, we had not talked in years. I'd heard that, I'd followed your, I won't call it church escapades in Park City, but I was so thrilled when I knew that for your service, and I'd run into people, but no, we really hadn't connected. And I know that people think that, that I'm, because I'm a sales, marketing, whatever, gung-ho person, that, I'm out there chasing everybody everywhere I go. I'm on a mission, and it's just been very interesting, because occasionally something will say, oh, I should reach out to this person, or I should share this, or, I'm trying to help people. And like Carl Anderson, I was sick when he told me, he said, well, I stopped taking it when I fell. And I go, Carl, seriously, that's when you need to take more. And because we've seen unbelievable results with surgery, unbelievable results with rehab, and those types of things. So when I heard that you were going through that, it just was like, and I was really busy, and driving from Woodland to Colville isn't, like driving just down the street. And you were tied up, and and you don't know what the heck. You didn't know if I was bringing the latest deal from Amway or who knows what. I mean, you had no idea. So it was just so interesting. And then to have us connect, and then have you ultimately say that you felt like YouTube was limiting you, with no offense, or others, because of the situation. And I said, well, hey, let's do it. I've never done that before. I've never said, let's sponsor a podcast. And it's been unbelievable, the results. And the most fun is, and what I would ask, for an old man like me, just tell your stories in the comments. Those are so great for me. I probably shouldn't even say it, but I just got a thing from Pastor Bill Cook, who's the head of the Black Robes Regiment, who said, John, I gave Cardio Miracle to a friend who was in complete failure, complete failure, 10%. 2 months later, he's almost back to normal. He said the doctors are blown away. So I can't say what it does all the time to everything, but the stories that we hear, and that's why the people can tell their stories to each other. But, when I need a boost, and it's not a caffeine boost, I just drink cardio. Oh, so, it's become that important. And when I'm sluggish, it helps give me the boost. Well, I just know that for whatever reason, that in the last days that we were meant to link arms again, and to help. Absolutely. Because this is the fight. This isn't about selling a drink, for heaven's sakes. This is about the gathering of Israel. This is about of helping where we can. We don't have to be called and set apart for everything to function in life, to extend ourselves. I'm having a greater evangelical outreach than who knows how many of other people who are in important callings. I can do that as an example, and as a person, not as a celebrity or as a leader. I can be it as a person, and that's what I'm just trying to respond to the best I can. And the fact we have well over 1,000 customers from the Cows Network, and it just warms my heart. It just warms my heart, and the results have been fantastic. So it's been a great time together. But I just am so thrilled about Kirtland. It's really lifted me up the last month or so to be a part of that feeling again, because I really believe it was the probably my crowning financial little effort in my life. And I've done a lot of financial things that I just am really happy that I stepped up when I could, because I couldn't afford to do it at the time. I donated quite a bit. I spent a lot of time, but boy, that's just like any time you sacrifice, and it wasn't a sacrifice. What a blessing to meet Carl Anderson, and Don Brewer, and Locke Mackay of the Community of Christ, and go and walk those sacred grounds. For me, I think it was kind of my preparation for my last chapter of my life. So
awesome. Well, anything else that you have to say, dear?
I'm just so thankful to Heavenly Father for our paths connecting. Mm-hmm. And, we really have a great opportunity to bring others to Christ through this work. And people will say, oh, you're just doing it to make sales. You know what? If you're not well physically, you are not well spiritually. And you cannot proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ to anybody, anywhere, at any time, if you are sick, in bed. Or stuck at home.
Yeah. So we need to plan that trip to Kirtland together and do a couple of videos on site for the community of cows.
I have an idea, and I need to talk to somebody about it before I say anything else. But
okay,
I really think we could get a tour of people.
Oh, we could easily get a tour. Easily, it'd be great, and
that would be really cool.
Yeah,
I would love that.
Well, we'll have to do that.
All right.
And then by the way, I probably should tell people we have introduced our new formula. We upgraded it. There was nothing taken out. Everything has been improved. We added NAC, lion's mane, and glutathione, as well as the finest sweetener in the world. We went with a smaller scoop, so it'd be easier for people to put it into a water bottle and other things. So instead of one bigger scoop, it's 2 smaller scoops per serving. So we're not recommending people just to take the smaller scoop, but we made a few enhancements. We've got our shipping in, didn't have a price increase. People are blown away. 5.5 years. And it's not because we had such big profit margin. It's just our commitment is to provide the best product in the world. And we've just now upgraded it with the new formula. It's been upgraded, and not one essential thing has been changed in that formula. We did minimize a little bit of the flow agent, which causes a little bit of that little dust that comes up when people are scooping. But the response has been great. So, and it's got a little bit of a tinge of vanilla, hint of vanilla flavor to it. People are responding spectacular. People don't like change, but we had to go to a more large scale, because of our growth, manufacturer that's even better, and better shipping systems. And we now have a better situation getting things more reasonable to Canada, to Europe, and other places in the world. So people can now order and save a lot on shipping on our international. That's great. So a lot of good things are happening, but God bless you too. Thank you so much.
Can I just ask you one question, John?
Sure.
Some people have said, well, Cardio Miracle isn't so great all the time. You can get too much of it in your system. And I want you to address that for 1 minute, because I think it's important for people to hear the truth.
Well, my Janet takes sometimes 6 and 8 servings a day. You cannot overdose. Anything that is excess will be excreted by the body. You help support the body, and everything's fine. You cannot, people who are reading occasional literature, think about it. Who would want us out there to not take vitamin D3? Who would want people not to increase their nitric oxide? Well, maybe people who are trying to sell the average 65-year-old 8 prescriptions and surgery,
right.
And everything else. So be careful who you're listening to and what your source is. Again, try it for yourself. Get your blood work, get your dental work, You know, if you have kidney issues, get your GFR. If you have diabetes, get your A1C, and then watch the numbers. Trust the numbers. Trust the science. Trust how you feel. Don't trust some random article by some guy who thinks that they got some great thing. Do your own research. The research is unbelievable. It's over the moon. And I can tell you, when people like Judy Mikovits and Robert Scott Bell and Ty and Charlene Bollinger and Christiane Northrup and David Martin all take and drink as much Cardio Miracle as they want every day, that's good enough for me.
Me too.
Me too. Awesome, brother.
Love you.
Love you.
Thanks so much.
You.
Okay.
Love you. We'll see you
later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.